Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. I am Peter Johnson, Interim Senior Pastor. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
We are delighted to continue our questions, and we have a couple of volunteers who are going to be walking around the room. So if you'd like to raise a question here this evening, we're going to continue to answer your questions. As we are a small but fierce and mighty group tonight, you might even get a chance to ask more than one question. So be bold, and also, introverts can ask questions too, simply by texting the number that I think will be up on the screen in just a moment. So there's a phone number on the screen. You can text those questions, and we get them right here as well. But I thought that I would begin by one of the questions that was posed on the tree up in the narthex, and that is, do you ever get angry with God? And my answer to that is absolutely yes. There have been many times in my life where I've been frustrated, angry, rageful at God for things that have happened in my life, for things that are happening in the world, for the ways that people treat one another. And it's a beautiful sentiment to me that the Bible is full of ways that people are angry toward God, especially in the book of Psalms. And so even when you don't have words to put on your anger, you can turn to some of the Psalms, and they will provide words which often give balm. Because anger that gets stuck goes nowhere. And anger can be productive at times too. So God hears our anger. God hears every feeling that we have and welcomes it. So the answer to that is yes. Are there any questions in the room right off the bat? Raise your hand, and Luke and Sabina are going to walk to you. Perfect, we got one in the back. And while you're walking, you go right ahead. You're ready for it. Let's hear the first question.
Good.
Is God all powerful, or is God all good? What do you think, friends?
I don't think it's great question, and I think that God is both. It's not a both and, but that God is powerful, and with his power, God is also good. It isn't always, God shows God's power in a lot of different ways. It may rub some people in the wrong way, which would make them say, well, that wasn't good. But I think that really is a great definition of God, as powerful and a God who is good and just.
Great. Any other additions? Pastor Sarah or Caleb?
When I think of a question like this, I kind of remind myself, and I just tend to stop short and remind myself that God is all. Instead of focusing on how necessarily I feel what God might be in the moment, or maybe how I might feel slighted, or sometimes I might be angry, I might be happy, I just have to remind myself that God gave us all of this to have those reactions. But I would also agree.
Keep those questions coming if you've got a question. All right, we see one right here, and I'm going to pivot to those that we're getting online, but we'll get to you right next, Lene. So, why is there no mention of dinosaurs in the Bible?
Pastor Sarah, I think that's got your name all over it.
My nephew would say there is. But I think it's such a long part of history that it's hard to include everything. I think in the creation of animals and everything that includes, we don't hear every single thing that is being created or made. And so I think when we hear of creation, it's creation as a whole. And it gives you sort of these polar opposites, but there's a lot of stuff in the middle that's being created that's not necessarily talked about. So do I think that including dinosaurs would have been a really neat addition to the Bible? Yes. However, the writers of the Bible did not think so. So, we don't have dinosaurs in there.
But wait. I think about that great word, Leviathan.
Leviathan.
And I think a Leviathan is a dinosaur.
I hear you.
I do.
Cheers.
I think so.
And God, and I think it's in Job, but remember Leviathan, who I created for the sport of it.
Yeah,
I think
there
is
you
the
go.
line. Just for the sport of it.
I think it is. I see
God
it.
created Leviathan for the sport of it.
So it's really, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, let's go to the question in the room, please.
How do you respond to people who say that their version of Christianity is the only true version?
Well, they're wrong.
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, what do you say to Christians who say their version is the only true version? That's tricky. That's real tricky.
I find, is that all right if I take it?
Yeah.
Or were you
Yeah,
thinking?
please.
No. I mean, when I think of this, I think of a lot of people that are casting judgments before they know everything and claiming they know it all. I think if you're claiming anything as the absolute true form or I'm 100% right, I find that to always be a little fishy. So I think it's always great knowing that the whole point of our faith is, and as a group, is that we have all these questions of why, and that's why we gather. We gather for these questions. We gather to talk about our faith and have those questions. So if I went to a church and they have all the questions answered, I think I wouldn't find it to be very community-driven.
Good answer. I think I might add one little piece that I think certainty, it isn't a bad thing to be certain about things, right? Be certain about things that we can anchor and sink our teeth into and stand firm on. But when certainty becomes a barrier for relationship or a barrier to get curious about someone, then I think we might be in trouble, you know? So I think that's what I would start to get curious about with someone. Keep those questions, keep raising your hands, and someone will come to you. So keep raising those hands in the room, but I've got lots of questions here, so I'll keep us cooking. This one is a little bit on the edge of what we have said is allowable, but I'm going to allow it, and it doesn't have to do with the color of the carpet, so it's not a downright outside of the realm. But the question is, what's the calling process for a senior pastor? Is it an interview process? And what might be a possible timeline? And I am going to hand this to our wonderful interim transition pastor, Pastor Chernohoy.
Yeah. Well, you are in a call process, and I think about the joy of that and the scary parts about that. And I go back into Scripture and to realize that the Spirit is with you, and God continues always to be calling people into new things. And so at this point, your former senior pastor, Liliord, accepted a call, which then had an impact on you. And in these last months since Pastor Liliord left, you have been in a transition process. And many of you have taken part in listening posts. And that was very intentional, as the Spirit guided you to think about and reflect on your life and mission. And so that that piece and that document has been handed back to the church council. It's gone before the staff. And so all of that prayerful deliberation now has become part of a thing that's called a site profile, which really says this is who St. Andrew is in this time of its history. Now, part of the call process then is also the council has been discerning who will be on the call committee, and the week after Easter, the council will come together and they will officially name that call committee, which you will know, and then they will prayerfully begin that process of deliberation of what the Spirit is guiding St. Andrew to look at for the gifts and skills in your new senior pastor. And they will do it with all intentionality, with confidentiality. In terms of a timeline, you want your council and your call committee to be diligent and to be listening to you, to be listening to the Spirit, and having a process. So time frame is very, very difficult because you want them to really enter into deep interviews, conversations, and then finally, as one, be able to hand back to you the name of whoever it is that God has called, and you have said yes to, and that can, I don't know when that's going to happen. So was that good enough?
I think so.
So that's just, you'll know more, but you are already in that process, and God is blessing you in the midst of it.
I think that's a good answer. Thank you. Any other questions in the room?
There's
yes?
one.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh. Or was there one?
Is there one up here too? Keep your hands raised if you've got one, so we'll make sure Mike gets to you.
So my question is, we always think of God as love. God loves all of us. And so I struggle with a lot of the conquest and war stories in the Old Testament in particular. And so because I am a rule follower, why do you think those stories are there?
Yeah, so the question of why are these stories of conquest in the Old Testament? God is a God of love. Why do we have the stories of conquest in the Old Testament? Yeah, good questions. Some of these stories, and I maybe will lean into this one since no one is volunteering readily.
Well, I was going to say Pastor Matthew. I think that would be a really good
I
one for you.
figured that was going to make its way back to me anyway, so I'll lean in. So first of all, some of the stories of conquest in the Old Testament actually tell the story from two different vantage points, which is really unique. We have these histories that are told from different perspectives, some from the loser and some from the winner. And that teaches us something, that any story told is told from a perspective. So we have these texts. Some of them are terrible, right? And I will say that. Like I'm not going to defend what Joshua does in removing the Canaanites from the Promised Land. There's some awful atrocities in there, and it still can teach us. It still can force us to question, and it's in this book, so we continue to wrestle with it, so that it continues to be a spine that points at us and pinches at us. The other question that's maybe under your question is about also the God of judgment. If God is a God of love, what about a God of judgment? And some of us always think that the God of judgment lives in the Old Testament, God of love lives in the New Testament. I'll have to tell you, there's just as much judgment in the New Testament as there is in the Old, and just as much love in the Old Testament as there is in the New. But what judgment can do is that it can be a mirror to us. Sometimes we get in trouble like Joshua, like humans. Sometimes we get in trouble like David or Moses, like humans. And we need a mirror to show us where we are in error. And so the Bible is full of stories like that. And sometimes even the texts themselves defend it to the end. And that's hard to wrestle with. But it's there so we might continue to wrestle. Did I cover it? All right. I'm seeing nods, so I think I did okay. All right. I think we might have one more question possible if there's one in the room. There's one over here. Thanks for running, Luke.
Can anyone or anything be perfect?
Ask it one more time.
Can anyone or anything be perfect?
Can
Well-
anyone or anything be perfect?
Can anyone or anything be perfect? I'm gonna delay on this one because I've answered this one before, Alma.
Must not have liked your answer.
I think she wants one of you.
Can anyone or anything be perfect? I think the only thing that can be perfect is God. And sometimes I think God does mess up and change God's mind, right? But I think perfection is in the eye of the beholder. So God made everybody wonderful and unique and out of love. And is that perfect when God creates us? Maybe. But I don't think perfection is something we should strive for. I think what we should strive for is to be that person that God created you to be. So if you're quirky and weird and you love, a bunch of different colors, you can be quirky, weird, and all those different colors because that's how God made you. And that, to me, is what makes us perfect, is when we live into how God created us to be. And we know that in our heart, and we know that through, the world and the way that we see it and how we feel God's love.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you, Pastor Sarah. Thank you, all of you. I have so enjoyed these questions, these times Wednesday night to lean in, to wonder together, and I think to hear some good news as well. So we'll continue with worship as we receive our
And
offering.
Pastor Matthew, if we want to carry
Yeah.
on this conversation, what do we do?
If we want to continue this conversation,
Where are
this
we gonna
doesn't
go?
have to end here.
No, it could end
Thank
in-
you. If you would like to walk down the hallway right after worship, anybody is welcome, and we'll continue to wrestle with some questions as well in room 207. So we'll see you down there if you'd like.
Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.